Let's jump right into it with Nick Cater, Menzies Research Centre Senior Fellow and columnist with The Australian. Nick, let's start with the Woolworths CEO. He's making headlines again. This time it's not for bashing Australia Day. This time he stormed out of an interview with the ABC after the interviewer declined to edit the interview to remove comments that Brad Banducci regretted making on camera. Let's have a look at this extraordinary vision.
No. You're walking out, really?
No. Can we just talk
Brad for a second? Sorry, I can't accept that. Rod Sims, the former head of the ACCC, says that we have one of the most concentrated supermarkets in the world. Is he lying?
It's not true.
His words are that we have...
by the way.
I don't think you would impugn his integrity and his understanding of competition law.
I'm just saying the world has got much more competitive since the terrific initiatives that were put in place back in whatever it was, 2008-9.
He retired 18 months ago. He's not...
Okay, can we take that out? Is that okay?
Sorry, let's just keep going.
Are we going to...
Sorry, what are you unhappy with?
I shouldn't have said that about Rod about him being retired.
Well, you did say it,
yeah,
and...
I mean, he is retired, but I shouldn't have said that, Angus. Are we going to leave it in there if we are?
Well, I mean, we're on the record. Okay. You said it. I mean, you know...
This is a guy making over $7 million a year. Let's just have a quick look at how this interaction ended.
Yeah, no, I think I'm done, guys. I do this with good intent. I don't do this with bad intent. No.
You're walking out, really?
No. Can we just talk Brad for a second? Can we just have a minute? Let's pause. We'll be finished in a sec.
Nick, he then went off to speak to his no doubt well-remunerated PR and communications team before sitting down and completing the interview, which was all about supermarket price gouging. Just another inept performance from this CEO who is on plenty of coin.
Yeah, look, he should have been prepared for that question about a concentrated market. Woolworths has got 38% of the market, Rita, so he's got to have a response to that. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't noticed quite how many Woolworths there were around the place until I decided not to use them anymore after that furore about them not carrying Australia Day merchandise. I haven't been in one since, but I tell you what, every time you would go out and buy something, you come across a Woolworths and you have to really look to find something else. So I think this is a real issue. Woolworths should have an answer for that. And certainly I think the ACCC should be watching this very carefully. The market's less concentrated than it was with people like Aldi coming in, but it's not a good thing if we don't have competition. It's bad for the consumer and bad for the farmers.
Absolutely. Now, you had a fantastic piece in the Oz on Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese's unaffordable green dream being blacked out by reality. You ask why the Prime Minister's price gouging czar isn't asking energy companies why they were cashing in on the misery of Victorians last Tuesday as much of Melbourne was plunged into darkness. It is curious, isn't it, that this sector seems to have, well, its own rule book.
Yeah, well, the prices go through the roof whenever there's a shortage of electricity. And it's understandable that it should do that because that attracts new people in with more supply. Because it means that there is some chance for the companies to game this by not producing electricity when they might be able to run it down and then to put it in when it runs high. But at the end of the day, this market needs fixing because it's the consumers that pay in the end. And we just can't have a system where in the middle of the day, the wholesale price is negative sometimes. And at the end of the day, it can go up well over $1,000 a megawatt hour. It's a very messy system, and it's been made much, much worse by the introduction of so much renewable energy. And it's squeezing out the baseload, of course, which is the coal, which is the stuff we actually need to keep the lights on. It's getting worse month by month, and Bowen's policy is driving it really downhill.
And consumers just have no idea how it all works. It is just so complicated. It's almost designed for the consumer not to understand precisely what's happening. You also wrote about the collapse of the steel towers on Victoria's main transmission line. You said that was irrefutable evidence our current transmission network needs upgrading. You're arguing that before we spend all this money building another 10,000 kilometres of transmission lines, perhaps we should be maintaining the existing lines. That's not a very popular argument at the moment.
Well, I mean, you could just see 6 towers came down. They kind of buckled in the wind. They're clearly not up to the job. I think they've been there for some decades, but they need strengthening because that's Victoria's main transmission line we're talking about. And if that goes down as it did, a lot of people and a lot of businesses are inconvenienced. So the idea we stick another 10,000 kilometres up, you know, and just keep building it. No, let's get those ones firmed up first. And if they're going to build new ones, and I don't think they really have to if they had a sensible energy policy, but if they want to, then what about putting them underground, out of the way, where the farmers, as the farmers and the people in those communities want them to? They're not going to get blown down in the wind that way. And it may be a little bit more expensive initially, but if you want these things to last, it probably could be cheaper in the end. I'd like to see that being one of the lessons that came out of last week's collapse of half the Victorian electricity grid.
And it won't be soiling the countryside either. I mean, you just see beautiful vistas ruined by these transmission lines, and it's only going to get worse. The federal government has released its official diet advice, which now also has a focus on the impact of certain foods on climate change. So climate change is now coming into dietary advice. Farmers are not happy, Nick. They say this is driven by an ideological agenda against red meat. They're going to tell us to eat the bugs soon, aren't they, Nick? That's the next step after this.
Yeah, I won't be eating them, but I think they'll be telling us to. It's really quite crazy, isn't it? And it's a particularly perverse and wrong look at the way agriculture works. And the fact is that grazing animals put nutrients back into the soil as they go and keep the soil rich, and that the ground is biodiverse and everything. It works very nicely indeed. This idea that red meat is somehow bad for the climate is absolutely unscientific nonsense, and it's been put up by, you know, I don't know, some mad vegetarian activists, I would imagine. Rita, I'm told there are more ex-vegetarians in Australia than vegetarians. I think that's official. So that tells you something about it.
Well, yeah, we might look into that one. Now, the Australian reports that the red meat producers are concerned that this move by the National Health and Medical Research Council to incorporate environmental sustainability into Australian dietary guidelines is based on misinformation and incomplete data about the industry's effects on the environment. So I'm sure we're going to hear a bit more about this in the coming days. Now to more silliness, woke silliness, this time from the Queensland government. They love renaming things. They've renamed Fraser Island, much to the disgust of tourism operators there who had spent so much money and resources trying to get that name recognition and promoting that name over the years. That name recognition is gone now. Now there is a push to rename Magnetic Island's iconic national park. They want to put an Indigenous name there. The move has been slammed by residents, Nick. They are not happy about this development at all.
No, it's quite crazy, isn't it? It's become a real sort of symbolic thing that they have to do. They'll be renaming Ayers Rock next, I'm sure. It's just, but you know, I mean,
very funny.
The ABC, I'm sure, call it by this new name already. What is it, Unanan or something? Because you listen to the ABC and they're calling Hobart by its Aboriginal name and Sydney by its Aboriginal name. It really is to deny our history and just to, I think, just needlessly confuse people. And as you say, I mean, it'll it will be very hard for the tourist industry. And Magnetic Island, I mean, that's a great name, isn't it? I mean, Magnetic, you never forget that one. And I think that they've got to really take stock and just say, come on, let's just be sensible about this. Let's not keep changing names and confusing everybody.
Well, Magnetic Island resident and writer Mary Vernon, she's warned of a massive backlash from the locals. She told the Cairns Post, a lot of people are concerned about it because it's just a meaningless gesture. Yeah, it really is. I think people are also worried about where it might lead and the possibility of renaming the entire island. And I think those fears are very, very sound indeed, because I'm sure that would be the next step. First a national park, then why not the whole island? That makes sense. Now, Nick, I know you do love your celebrity news. You can't get enough of it. So I thought you're the perfect person to discuss this with. Travis Kelce, we remember he embarrassed himself after his Super Bowl triumph with this much mocked performance.
Y'all hear this? We've been fighting for all right all day. How about a little Viva Las Vegas? Viva Las Vegas! Viva! Viva Las Vegas!
And he has repeated those shenanigans again, only this time it's arguably even more cringeworthy.
All my roots, I sold up in booze and ruined the Niners affair. The last one to know, we were the last one to show, we were the last one they thought they'd see there.
That's enough, please. It goes on for some time. Nick, his girlfriend, Taylor Swift superstar, is in the country now. Surely she's having second thoughts after seeing this.
Maybe that's why she's overseas so much, Rita, because she's used to this. Look, I mean, it's simple, isn't it? He should leave the singing to her, as she's probably quite happy to leave the football to him. But, do what you're good at, really. But I wonder whether he looks back at the recording of that and thinks, oh, didn't I look fantastic? I bet he does. People who are that brazen and that make that much of an idiot of themselves, they're usually completely oblivious to the fact that they have. He probably thinks that he's horrific, God's gift to singing.
Nick Cater, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thanks, Rita.